throughout this course, we have come a long way where we pretty much just unit tested both the customer unit right here, so this bigger unit, and within this unit we had a bunch of classes that we tested, and the same with this payment box right here. So this is a unit that within it we have a bunch of classes that we've also tested. So we could go ahead and implement the Twilio functionality or the functionality of sending messages, but I'm going to leave this to a bigger exercise, because once we have the integration test for a customer and payment, then adding the Twilio functionality and testing that it works will be a good exercise for you to test your knowledge throughout this course and make sure that you come out of this course as a good tester. So now it's time for us to actually make sure that all the pieces do work together. So what we're going to do in this section is create an integration test. An integration test simply means that you have the application up and running, right? So you fire up the application and then you make sure that you act as a client, right? Or we're going to write some code that acts as a client, and then that will go through this unit right here, which we have unit tested, right? And then we'll see whether it works or not. And the same with the post. So basically this will be like a journey. So a customer comes in, it registers, and then it tries to make a payment, and basically we're just testing that the integration does work, right? So we're trying to integrate the whole thing. So you can see right here, the integration right here is scoped around the entire application, whereas the unit, right? So the unit focus simply on the actual unit itself. So that's the difference between unit testing and integration testing. So what we're going to do is the following. So remember that we have Stripe and also Twilio later on, right? But with Stripe, I've mentioned that with unit testing, we want to make sure that we mock Stripe, right? So the same principle does applies with integration testing, because remember, the whole point of having unit testing and integration testing is when you, for example, push your code to GitHub, for example, then you have some kind of pipeline. So a CI pipeline, continuous integration pipeline, making sure that your application is intact by running all the tests. And if you work within a team of, let's say 100, 200, 1,000 developers, you don't want to, run your integration testing and unit testing against the real API, right? So making network calls to Stripe or Twilio, for example, right? So probably you'll start to get throttled, and you shouldn't really do it, right? So usually what we tend to do is to actually mock this Stripe API right here. So one solution is to, for example, use something like Stripe mock. So this is actually a Go binary that simply spins up a mock HTTP server that acts as the real Stripe API right here, right? So we could do that for integration testing, but this means that we will end up managing another piece of infrastructure or code, and basically we can do something simpler than this, right? And I'm going to show you exactly how we're going to tackle all of this to make sure that our application does not depend on other external dependencies, right? So the same way that we actually ignore to use Power Mock, we're not going to use any mock HTTP server for either Stripe or Twilio. You can, if you want, feel free to use it, right? There's nothing wrong about it, but I just want to show you the best practices, and then you can decide whether you should use the mocking version, right, of the Stripe or Twilio or not, right? So this is all for now. Next, let's go ahead and let's go ahead and so right here you see that I've added this fake. So we're going to create a class that will act as the fake Stripe API. Basically it will be our mock, right? And actually let me simply name this as mock. I think it's better, right? So this will act as the mock Stripe service that will allow us to perform integration tests. So we're going to do the same for Stripe and Twilio right here later on. So if you have any questions on all of this, go ahead and drop me a message. Otherwise, let's move on.